What is going on in Syria and why are the rebels advancing so fast? So I have to start by saying that the situation in Syria is really fluid, but if you want to focus on the situation, we have to focus on the four quadrants of the problem. Those quadrants are Assad, Russia, Iran, and Turkey. So when you think of Syria, it's best to think of these four corners, each of which is kind of pulling on Syria to try to gain influence. Now, this is a very high-level overview. I know I'm going to get the whole, well, what about? Just stop, all right? The Detroit Lions are 12-1 right now. You're lucky Americans are even watching this YouTube video, okay? So, high-level overview, guys, 30,000-foot view. Now, a couple of things. My background might look a little different right now. I'm in a hotel room in Dallas. I'm down in Texas helping the Aeromed Labs drone test facility get up and running. We just leased some land to do testing on. In fact, we have a new drone that we should get in next week or so. So if you're a software engineer, take a look at our career page. We have 2 C#, and I think there's going to be a CUDA job posted soon if you're a CUDA programmer. But you have to work on site because you're going to be interfacing with the actual drone. And if you are interested in investing, WeFunder, our WeFunder page is up as well. So let's go to the first quadrant, which is Assad. And by the way, for those of you who don't know Arabic, Assad means the lion or just lion. And Assad, his family, and most of the high-ranking military, police, and secret police in Syria are from, it's not exactly a tribe, but it's like this ethno-religious group called the Alawites. And this is like a branch of Shia Islam, although they kind of have their own thing going on, like they drink alcohol. If you compare Islam to Christianity, the Sunnis would be like the Catholics. The Shia are like the Protestants, and the Alawites are like Unitarian Universalists, right? Alawites draw from multiple traditions and emphasize their own interpretation of religious truths. So for like 30 years or so, Syria was run by this Alawite man, Hafez al-Assad. His eldest son, Basil al-Assad, was kind of being groomed for leadership. Now, his younger son, Bashar, was never really interested in politics, and eventually he studied to become a doctor. He did his national military service in Syria as an army doctor, and then he left for London to do his residency in ophthalmology. Now, his older brother dies in a car crash, and Bashar's father calls Bashar home to get him prepared to rule Syria. Bashar comes home and he does a couple of things. First, he takes over as the commander of the Syrian occupation of Lebanon. Second, he starts to wage like this anti-corruption campaign. And the people who are corrupt all just happen to be people who have enough power to oppose Bashar al-Assad for the presidency. Like, funny how that worked out. Now, by the way, Bashar al-Assad is also the guy who brought the internet to Syria. So, initially people thought, oh, this guy's going to be great. He's going to be a reformer. So Hafez al-Assad dies, and there's some legal trickery because technically Bashar wasn't old enough to become president. So they are able to lower the age in their constitution to 34, which just happens to be Bashar al-Assad's age. He's elected in July of 2000, actually, with 97% of the vote. So the Syrian people think they have a reformer, so they start protesting, demanding more reforms. And Bashar al-Assad just starts throwing these dudes in jail. And we find out that this geeky ophthalmologist is actually Dexter. Now, Arab Spring happens in 2011. And this was a time where there were a lot of protests in the Arab world about their living conditions. And Assad put down his protests brutally. Some of his military officers actually defected and they became part of the opposition. If you ever hear of a faction called Free Syrian Army, that's basically them. It's basically former military officers and soldiers who wanted to fight against Assad. Now, right now, I don't know how accurate this map is, but I am making this on Saturday, December 7th, 2024. But as of right now, most of Assad's forces are in full collapse. And rebel forces are like yeeting themselves down the M5 highway. And ultimately, this highway has one destination. That's Damascus. Now, in the next quadrant, you have Russia. Russia has been a Syrian ally since the Cold War, and Russia supplied a lot of arms to Syria. Russian planes were used to help bomb targets in the Syrian city of Aleppo so that Assad's forces could take that city. And this was a very critical city because the M4 and M5 highways run right through that city. Now, Russia also has two main bases in Syria. It has a naval base and a logistical base at Tartus, and there's an air base at Basel al-Assad International Airport. So why are these bases important to Russia? Well, the naval base is basically Russia's only presence in the Mediterranean Sea. Without Syria, Russia is fresh out of friends in the region. So they need to maintain this naval base, although there are reports that they might be evacuating it. The air base was mainly used to support Assad in the bombing campaigns either against the rebels or against Daesh, which is often called ISIS. And Daesh appeared in like 2014 to take advantage of the power vacuum in Syria with the Syrian government fighting the rebels. That's when ISIS, or as I like to call them, Daesh, started building up and taking territory. Now again, I don't know how accurate this map is, but the rebels are about to cut Russia off from the rest of the country. Not that big of a problem if you're just bombing, but it's a lot harder to evacuate citizens if you can't use charter buses. And you have to rely on aircraft or helicopters that you really want to be packing up to transport back to Russia because you kind of need them. Now, know that this war in Syria is more of a headache for Russia than an advantage for Russia. It used to be an advantage. Back before the war in Ukraine, Syria could be used to farm XP for Russian pilots and special forces. Now that those aircraft and parts are needed in Russia to fight the war in Ukraine, I think we're going to see Russia start packing this stuff up and try to get as much stuff the heck out of Syria as they can before the rebels close in on their bases. Some stuff will get left behind, and we're going to get pictures that are similar to the U.S. pullout in Afghanistan. War is hard. Now, in the next quadrant, we have Iran. Iran's main goal in Syria is twofold. The first is that it's a way for its IRGC, or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, to farm XP fighting rebels or fighting Daesh. Second is that southern Syria provides a conduit for weapons to get to Hezbollah in northern Lebanon. The weapons go from Iran through militia-controlled Iraq, through Syria, into Lebanon, and then Hezbollah takes those weapons and they fire them at Israel. Now note that Hezbollah has honest-to-God special forces operators that are fighting Daesh, or were fighting Daesh in Syria, and they were farming XP for their fight against Israel. Now also note that there are some reports that Iran is evacuating their personnel from Syria because they see the writing on the wall that Syria is going down. Finally, we have Turkey. Now, Prime Minister Erdogan is kind of like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. He's doing what's best for Turkey and kind of manipulating the system so that at the end of the conflict, Turkey is the major winner. A couple of reasons for that. There is this ethnic group called the Kurds, and they are basically a stateless people. And they live like in this crossroads of Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. And if you didn't think the Arabs could hate anyone more than the Jews, the Kurds were like, hold my yogurt. In fact, I think that many of the reasons the Arabs hate the Kurds so much is that after the State of Israel was formed, all the Jews who were living in the Arab world kind of left for Israel. And the Arab states were like, man, who can we hate now? Kurds! And the Kurds were just an easy target. It probably didn't help that many of them wanted their own homeland, or at least wanted this, kind of blows your mind here. They just want to be recognized as human beings, right? And just have a right to exist. Now, the Kurds are a major U.S. ally, and the U.S. has been funding Kurdish rebel groups in Syria. But Turkey has occasionally dealt with Kurdish uprisings during its history, most recently the PKK, or Kurdish Workers' Party. So Turkey has funded groups like the Syrian National Army, which don't confuse with the Syrian army, which is controlled by Assad, or the Free Syrian Army, which is composed of rebel secular officers. I know this really gets Life of Brian here.
Judean People's Front. For the People's Front of Judea.
But the Syrian National Army, which is supported by Turkey, they fought loyalist Assad forces, and they fought Kurdish militia groups. So you have anti-Assad forces fighting other anti-Assad forces. Now, last week I put out an infographic that explained the major factions, and I can't get to them all because there's like 70 different factions. There's pro-Assad and anti-Assad. If you just kind of want to split it up into a main group, that's it. Pro-Assad, anti-Assad. Pro-Assad is Russia, Iran, Hezbollah. Anti-Assad are the Kurdish forces, the Islamist forces, and the secular forces, made up of remnants of the Syrian army who have defected to the rebels. If you really want a good explanation of that stuff, go to Preston Stewart's channel. He's fantastic with it. Just 2 weeks ago, Islamist anti-Assad forces took control of Aleppo, and now the rebels they kept moving south. Now they're 84 miles from Damascus. And I can think of 3 reasons of why this happened, or so quickly, or it might be a combination of all 3 reasons. First reason is that Russia they might not have the money or the troops to prop up Bashar al-Assad anymore. The second reason is that the attack on Aleppo started after a ceasefire was signed between Israel and Hezbollah. Hezbollah may have been attrited so much that they just don't have the forces they need to help prop up Bashar al-Assad, to help fight Daesh, and they're kind of concentrating on licking their own wounds and regaining power. And the third thing, and I think this is actually most likely, it's that there's going to be a new president on January 20th. And there's always that chance that he's just going to stop aid to the Kurds like that. So I think it could be a situation where Turkey is kind of prodding these Islamist forces to capture as much territory from pro-Assad forces as possible, so that if the weapons to the Kurdish forces are cut off, they'll actually be in a better place to stop fighting Assad, turn north, and start fighting the Kurds. At this point, supposedly Bashar al-Assad's family has evacuated and fled to Russia. From what I know, Assad is still in Syria. Unless there's some miracle, the days are numbered for this dude. Now, the State Department estimates Assad's personal fortune to be between $1 and $2 billion. So honestly, I don't know why that dude isn't on a tropical island somewhere making P. Diddy look like he was Amish, right? So that's what I would do. I would sit on an island and just make fun of Johnny Harris for the rest of my life. But, Assad will probably leave the country soon, because if he doesn't, he's going to end up like Gaddafi. Now, people have asked me, who should I root for? Root for the civilians. Root for the displaced, so perhaps they can come back home. Ultimately, it's the civilians that always suffer in conflicts like this. So keep the civilians in mind. That's who you should be rooting for, the civilians. And hey, if you want to support the channel, grab the Wind Machine from Amazon. It's a story about a hedge fund manager whose AI supercomputer discovers a potential limited nuclear exchange with China, and what he does with that information. What is behind the candy cane door? An audiobook for my Marine fans is finished. It's going to be on Audible. I'm just working on approval, so keep checking. And thank you guys so much for watching. I got to go do Aeromed Lab stuff now.
Oh no! 'Tis the office Christmas party, and I have nothing to wear.
Hey kid, what's going on?
Think tank!
Office Christmas parties can be tough, but a Christmas sweater from Bunker Branding can make it better.
Awesome! A very NORAD Christmas!
Yeah, it's got an American F-22 and a Canadian CF-18 escorting Santa on his midnight ride. But there's even more from Bunker Branding.
Alcoholics moving cargo.
Intel Life, Aerosol, Live Laugh Launch for Destroyer, Trident, HIMARS, and Patriot. Think outside the bomb. Drone Suite Drone, Department of the Boat People, landmines, and even the tow missile. It would behoove you to grab one today.
Can Bunker Branding help me with my sexual harassment complaint from work?
We're a t-shirt company. Have you tried not being a jerk?
No.